All right, welcome back to the Unnamed Movie Car Podcast, recording at you live from various racetracks across Europe because we watched the movie Rush. 2013, directed by Ron Howard, starring Daniel Bruhl, Chris Hemsworth, and Olivia Wilde. So, we have very differing opinions, which we've been trying to save for the podcast, but as some spilled over the edges in our personal lives. What did you think of the movie? Let's get into it.
Hated it.
Hated it.
Hated it. Absolutely hated the movie. Hated almost everything about it. Couple little things were okay. I mean,
wow.
Yeah. Here's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Howard, you owe me 2 hours of my life back. That's how I feel.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, this is very much not how I feel. But why do you feel that way?
I feel that way because for me, it was not. It was not an interesting movie. It wasn't a fun movie. I was actually literally stopping the movie and seeing like how much time I have left to watch this thing, that I have to sit through this thing. I really, really, really didn't like the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I know they were based on actual people.
And from what I've found, this movie was very accurate.
There
were some. The rivalry was apparently played up a little bit,
sure.
Of course, but you have to.
Of course.
Because apparently they were roommates at one point before.
Oh, really?
All of yeah.
Okay, well,
so like
cool.
That was sort of played up for the movie. The fact that they hated each other in real life, they were kind of friends.
Well, and don't get me wrong. I mean, they're human beings.
Right.
It's fine. They are who they are. But for a movie, usually you try to get at least one character that the audience can like
kind of latch to,
bond with, can follow around. One character that the audience likes.
Yeah.
That goes throughout pretty much the whole movie. I found the characters to be they were just giant babies and jerks and a-holes, and they were so mean to everyone else around them.
Mm-hmm.
They were so self-concerned, so conceited, so into themselves. It shows race car drivers in the worst possible light that there is at all. Absolutely 110%, because they were so mean to everyone around them. Their pit crew, everyone. They were just terrible, self-centered sons of, they are awful, awful, awful people. Usually when there's a movie, I go, well, that's a guy I'd like to have a beer with,
Mm-hmm.
sit down and have a drink or whatever and talk over stuff. That would be fun. Neither one of them, absolutely, they were so vile as characters, as people. There was nothing likable about either one of them, and in my realm, in my view, as the movie goes,
mm-hmm.
there was some cool shots. There was some cool things.
I think we agree on two things real quick here.
Yeah.
I think we agree that this is one of the most well-shot, cinematically shot films we've seen for this series.
Yes.
In terms of camera angles, in terms of lighting, coloring, stylization, this has to be up at the top.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Fast and Furious isn't doing the Dutch angle. You know what I mean?
Yes. They're not. Yeah, I get.
But the other thing that we agree on
Yes.
is the fact that there is very little character development throughout the movie.
Yes.
There's the one scene with James Hunt where he beats up the interviewer because he said something mean to Niki Lauda.
Yes.
Which is something that he probably wouldn't have done at the beginning of the film had
Correct.
Niki Lauda not been through all of that trouble.
Yes.
But that's really the only big character development scene. It ends with James Hunt still being the sort of playboy type, and Niki Lauda being kind of the not incel, but introverted. Yeah. Almost. I don't even know what it like. It almost actually came off as almost a form of autism.
Yes.
Where he was like so focused on his craft and
so mechanically
he had
driven.
So few emotions otherwise.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh yeah, let me have a drink at the end of the day. It was like, if it doesn't help the race, I am not doing it. Yeah. And that sort of thing. I agree with you there. There was very little character development.
There was little character development. It was shot very well. I like some of the scenes where they showed like on a wet racetrack,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of showed the in-helmet view
Mm-hmm.
of what it would really look like, and it's all blurry and it's hard to. That is a horrific, terrible thing to be in, and those drivers are in that for the entire race. It is awful. It is like
they're
a
open
nightmare.
cab or open top vehicles.
Right.
And I thought it was really interesting the cutting the hole in the visors.
Yeah, I thought
Which,
that
first
was
of all,
true.
why would you do it while it was on his head? You could have taken his eye out like immediately.
Whoops.
Yeah, no kidding.
Whoa.
Like end of movie. Oh, James Hunt is blind now.
Yeah, but he
Um,
would have been a blind driver that somehow they would have
Yeah,
it would have made it work.
but I mean there are
would
tricks
be.
like that, and
yeah.
and you know, having, not that I have tons of racing experience, but I spent a lot of my weekends last summer out on the
Sure.
racetrack with
Yeah.
Spec Miata
Yeah,
and
yeah.
whatnot, and it's very true. Like, do we put the reins on or not?
Sure.
Because when you put rain tires on, you lose a lot of time.
You do?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it
Alright,
actually
fine.
has treads. The slick tires don't
yeah,
have treads,
yeah.
and they are insane. They grip insanely in the dry.
Yeah.
But when you run the wet, also when you race in the wet, you take a totally different line around the racetrack.
Oh, really?
So normally, like in the dry, you clip the corners, you hit the apexes, you clip the corners as close as possible.
Yeah.
In the wet, you actually want to take the outside corner because the track isn't as, at least when we race at Autobahn, this is what we do. The track is so worn from everyone hitting that inside corner that it's completely flat. It's like glass.
Oh.
And so when
Okay.
water sits there, water sits on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But when you get to the outside edge of the racetrack, it's a
Okay.
lot rougher.
Yeah.
And so water actually disperses,
That makes
so you can
sense.
actually retain more grip going around the outside.
Yeah.
So
Makes
the rain,
perfect
getting
sense.
back to it, the rain scenes were very, very cool.
Yeah,
in
they
this
were
movie.
very cool.
Very accurate, I think,
Yes.
like you said, with the
Yes.
in-car shots.
Yeah.
And
One
things of that
thing
sort.
too that I wanted to throw out there like right away is, did you notice how slow the pit crews were?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe that's a 70s thing. Maybe that was because I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah,
I do think
because-
that's a 70s thing. There just wasn't the tech. I mean, there
Yeah.
weren't wrenches that put out 1.5 million foot-pounds
Yeah.
of torque
I
to
mean,
get
it's-
the wheels off.
But they were so slow.
Yeah.
It was like, come on, guys. You know, it
I
just-
wouldn't
yeah.
doubt that that wasn't, that was probably played up for dramatic purposes.
One guy
because-
stopped and had a donut. I'm
Okay,
just
well,
kidding. All right, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
well,
No.
but no,
Yeah. It
pit
was
stops
yeah.
have gotten faster and faster
Yeah,
and faster
absolutely.
and faster and faster. So
So I would
Yeah.
think, and that was probably, knowing Ron Howard, that was probably period accurate, where it was a
Mhm.
slower thing, which made it more frustrating for the driver because
Right.
he was like, let's go, let's go, let's
a
go.
pit
let's get out
stop
there."
was a lot bigger of a deal back then.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, think about. I mean, you grew up in the 70s.
Yes.
And did you have like a 20-gallon air compressor like what we have?
No.
I mean, like, yeah.
Well, I have to say, my dad had a rusty old air compressor that we never used because we were afraid it was going to blow up.
right.
So that kind of stuff. But
Just yeah,
no, we didn't
pneumatic
have-
technology has just come so
No, you
far
didn't.
and things like that.
No, we didn't have anything like that. And if I ever watched a race on TV, I still remember races being pretty quick. But maybe that was the thing. Maybe
Yeah.
they were just slow.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so painfully slow. I was like, come on, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
I was like yelling at the screen.
So
Yeah.
I actually really did like the movie.
Good.
I
that's
really
good.
did like the
I-
movie.
Yeah.
I liked, of course, the racing scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
I did think that, like, having dealt with people who do race,
Yeah.
egos are huge, which is so
I'm sure.
stupid.
I'm sure. Yeah. I
Being a racing driver and having a huge ego is so stupid to me, because literally you drive
Yeah.
a car in circles and stuff. You're not
Yeah.
curing cancer. You're not doing anything that really
Exactly.
helps the world.
Exactly.
But from the people that I've been with,
Yeah.
I can think of 3 names off the top of my head right now of
Yeah.
people that have egos way bigger than any car they'll throw around the track.
Yeah.
And it's just something that comes up because you feel, when you're racing, you feel like you're doing something that no one else can. You're piloting a machine that everyone has. Everyone has a car.
Right.
Everyone has a car, but you're doing something with the car that no one can do.
Some 3-year-olds don't have cars.
Well,
but-
some, yeah,
okay.
here in America.
Yeah.
But most
No, I
5-year-olds
get what
have
you're
cars.
saying. You're absolutely right, though. Yeah, I bet
Mm-hmm.
it is that feeling of, I am a superhero, I am a superstar.
Yeah, and it's like
When he calls him superstar, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
so-
also Ron Howard called Chris Hemsworth a superstar on wheels before hiring him.
Really?
He was very avid about getting Chris Hemsworth for this movie.
He looked a lot like the real guy.
A lot.
Yeah, that was pretty weird.
Yeah, Daniel, who played Nicky Lauda, less so. And we'll get into with the trivia. There's actually some stuff that they did.
All right.
But I really liked it. There was the only thing was the surgery scenes. This is the first time I ever had to skip over parts of the movie.
The surgery scenes.
Where he's in his after Nicky Lauda's crash, and they're doing the thing down his throat.
Oh yeah.
And all that stuff.
Awful,
I did have to skip through that.
Did you?
Yeah. Just because of personal events that have happened recently, I can't watch car crashes anymore. I can't do it.
Yeah, I totally understand.
And so this is the first time that I did have to skip over that stuff because it got too rough.
Totally understand.
The actual car crash didn't affect me all that much. But basically, I wanted to get that out there because go into this knowing that this is a very gruesome movie.
It is. Yeah,
there's not concerning a main character, but very early in the movie, there's a guy that gets decapitated.
Oh,
and you see
it.
I went back and rewatched it because I'm like, it's just in the corner, and they never do a close-up, but they pan over the car.
Yeah.
There's a body in the car just headless.
I did not see that. I
went back and looked at it, and which is actually something that really genuinely happened.
Yes.
And actually, there's a crash in F1 at the end of last year where they have these halos now, they call it, where it's like this little, it goes up in front of the driver, and then there's like a little circle above the driver that's made of carbon fiber. And a driver did the exact same thing that happened to the driver in the movie, where he went under the guardrail. And in the movie, the guy gets decapitated. But in real life, last year, the guy actually walked away. I don't know if he walked away. But he was in the hospital and he fully recovered.
Wow.
Because of technology and stuff. But it's very common. I don't know why the guardrails are so perfect height to decapitate people.
Exactly.
But again, go into this movie if you haven't seen it yet, knowing that it's going to be very graphic.
Yeah.
They do show a decapitated body in the car. Yeah. And they do a couple panning. You don't really notice it. You have to kind of be looking for it.
I didn't see it
because it just looks like a blue thing, but then there's a little red circle, and you're like, oh, that's his neck.
Okay.
And then the car is barely hurt because the guardrail was perfect size to just take the guy's head off, which was actually that was a real accident that killed a real driver.
And a lot of this was real stuff.
Oh, a lot of it. But also there's a track near us that's actually abandoned. It's been abandoned for 50-some years.
Yeah.
But it closed down because the guardrail on the hairpin turn decapitated 3 people.
Oh my gosh, change the guardrail.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the other thing is hey guys, let's not have guardrails that are the legit perfect height.
Maybe the first time, okay. Second time.
Yeah.
Third time. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it was just the track near us was just designed in such a way that there was a 3/4 mile straightaway into an immediate right-hand turn, 90 degrees.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so people just carry so much speed, anything happens, and it's game over. But it was also, it had no runoff area, which is a huge issue. But
yeah.
Anyway, getting past that, this was I did have to skip over some scenes. I just couldn't handle it. And so if you're gonna watch that, just heads up. If you have a weak stomach, heads up, especially with a lot of the burn victims.
Yes.
A lot of burning.
It was very, very difficult to watch. It was very, very difficult. And I understand they were doing it to show the pain, to show everything. Having him, he was intubated where they put a tube down into his lungs, and they suction out his lungs, which is really horrifically terrible. I mean, it's an awful, especially back in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, which it does build momentum for he's going through this hard process, and this whole time, while they're shoving the tube down his throat, he's looking over at the TV, and James Hunt is winning all of these races.
Spoiler alerts.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Spoiler alerts, jeez.
So this is the spoiler alert show. So
but all I could think about when they were shoving the thing down his throat, though, is that they shot it from the side, and I'm like, I'm sure it was like what every single kid has ever done, where the tube was just going next to his mouth, but the way it was shot makes it look like it was going into his mouth. I'm sure they did that.
Yeah, I'm sure they did it too, and like again, the way that they did that, they didn't show it like. I would have been impressed if they would have panned and showed actually going into his throat.
Moving shot would have been insane.
Yeah, that would have been insane.
But yeah, that was the only part of the movie that I didn't like. I just couldn't stomach and get through. But other than that, I really liked it. I liked the competition of it. I liked the car sequences were very exciting. The racing was very exciting, and I think the movie had a good balance of on track and off track. They didn't focus on track all that much. It wasn't like they would show like 5 minutes of the race, like a montage essentially.
They did more montages of races and basically explain. Now, the other thing too was that some of the race commentary was, and I know they had to do this for the movie, but it was actually like telling you exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Almost, unbelievably exactly what's going on,
Which, first of all, there's always lag in commentary.
Right.
Which I think is what you're alluding to, is the fact that like they were saying exactly who was doing what when.
Exactly.
When the car crashed, there's no way a car goes up in flames.
Yeah.
There's no way of knowing which car that was unless you watched every single second of that car crashing.
Yes.
Or like if there's only 2 cars out there and you saw the blue car still going, then you'd assume the red car. But like the fact that they knew like exactly what corner, what happened when, was a little far-fetched. But it did raise a question with me, and I don't know if you can answer this. Broadcasting in the 70s.
Yes.
And the 60s too. Was that digital? Were they recording digital? Like, there's no way they were obviously recording on film and then beaming it and cutting between cameras in a live TV event.
Well, it wasn't, especially in the 70s, it wasn't necessarily, if it wasn't digital, it was analog. So it was done on tape.
Right.
Huge tape, usually 1 or 2 inch tape, not even VHS at that point.
Right.
Broadcasting companies had that technology. It was not a consumer thing until really, I would say, early, mid-'80s. That became a huge consumer thing.
Okay.
So anyway, at that time, yes, broadcast, it was done. The tapes were actually, sometimes they were actually couriered to the next place where they would be broadcast. But I don't know if there was any kind of.
But like, if people watched this race live in 1970, how was that image getting out to everyone if it was recorded on tape?
Well, they were probably recording it on tape as well as broadcasting live. So yeah, I mean, some stuff was broadcasted live. You have to remember too that the moon landing was which was broadcast.
I guess they
live.
just had like big transistors on the cameras, like at this race, and like there was a typical guy with a switchboard that was cutting between cameras, or like.
Well, back then everything was linked together with wire. So basically, all of the cameras everywhere, any camera. I'm assuming, because I don't think there was any kind of a remote. Anything that we ever did, even in the 80s, was always linked with wires because they're more dependable than radio frequencies. So all of the cameras would have been linked to a production hub, and then you would have had a guy in there with a switcher, and he would have been switching between the different cameras, and they would have been rolling tape because they would want to be able to rebroadcast the race. So that is, definitely old school, but it's not. Okay. It wasn't probably, I don't know, it probably wasn't immediate. But it's usually in those events, they do not go back and edit anything. Yeah.
I figured as much. Switching.
Live switch,
one thing I wanted to touch on literally the one and only note that I wrote down, which I can't seem to find here. The one I wrote down a quote from the movie, and it was, "Men love women, but even more than that, men love cars."
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
I thought
too,
that it was kind of, at the time in the scene, it was kind of shoehorned in, and it was like kind of like one of those cliche moments.
Yeah.
But I really did love that quote, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
It is
on race day and stuff like that.
Especially with race car drivers, especially with people that are that passionate about racing. Absolutely.
Also, when they showed the Formula 3 series at the very beginning with James Hunt.
Yeah.
Which is actually when they say men love cars.
Right. That's right. It's Formula 3.
Yeah, men love women, but even more than that, they love cars. He just rolls up and gets in the car and is like ready to go. That is not how that happens in racing. Oh, no. You got to be there at the crack of dawn. You're in driver's meetings.
Okay.
You're obviously shaking down the car. That's one thing that they never really showed. Is that anytime you get in a car, you go out for practice laps.
Yeah.
Even if you know the car top to bottom, because the temperature is different. You know, whatever weather it might be, to the track.
Which makes sense.
You always shake out a car before you go out. And I think in this movie, he just kind of jumped in and was like, all right, I'm ready to race.
He also had a drink before he got into the car.
Yes, which was very typical of F1 and racing back in the day.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
There you go. The champagne showers and stuff, they don't do anymore.
No, they do milk now,
They do
right?
milk.
Yeah.
To not promote drinking and driving, obviously.
By the way, we're in the Midwest, so we say milk. Not milk.
Milk. I say milk, I think.
Milk? I say it with like an E, milk.
Oh, anyway. I say milk.
So anyway.
But like drinking. Well, even at one point, there's the Marlboro car. I mean, it was
absolutely.
like top to bottom Marlboro smoking.
Yep.
So obviously, like, that sort of stuff was a lot more popular. Drinking at the track was a lot more popular, a lot more laxed. But now drinking at racetracks is pretty much prohibited, especially in the paddock area, which is like the pits, essentially.
Right.
And so I'm sure we have those rules and laws at Road America and Gingerman and all that stuff. I'm sure we have those laws because of what happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that's why we have them.
Exactly.
So that part was actually probably somewhat accurate.
Okay. All right. I'll give you that.
Do we want to get into the cars real quick?
Yeah, let's talk about the cars.
Because there's one car I really want to talk about, and I want to see if you noticed it. It was a background car.
Okay. All right.
You would have noticed it. So first we'll talk about Niki Lauda's cars. His first one is a Ferrari 312T, which is a 3.0 liter flat 12 engine.
Flat 12?
Flat 12. A lot of them were flat 12s for quite a while.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and F1 has sort of gone back and forth between V8s, V6s, V12s. Okay. It's just all depending on the rules of that season.
Wow. Okay.
So when he was racing for Ferrari, is a 3.0 liter flat 12. The T in 312T does not stand for turbocharged, because this was before turbocharging came to F1.
Yeah.
But the T stood for traversale, which means transverse, because the transmission, get this, say this 3 times fast.
Yeah.
The transmission, I can't even say it 1 time fast. The transmission was transversely mounted, so it would stay in front of the rear axle for weight distribution.
Oh.
So the transmission was actually sideways in order to keep the weight distribution in front of the rear wheels, which I thought was just sort of an interesting tidbit. He also raced a Brom BT46, which is a 3.0 liter flat 12. Again.
Wow.
And then the McLaren MP4/2, which is a 1.5 liter V6 turbo built by Porsche. The engine was built by Porsche.
Interesting.
For James Hunt, a lot less information on James Hunt's cars. The first one that he raced in F1 was a Hesketh 308, which it just said it had a V8. Not sure what size. I assume like a 2-liter V8 or something.
Yeah.
F1 cars always have ridiculously small engine displacements, but high cylinder counts usually. That's why they're so high pitched.
Gotcha.
F1 cars don't sound like normal cars.
Yeah.
And that's normally why. And then he also raced a McLaren M23, which had a Ford Cosworth 3-liter V8 in it, which again is just interesting. And most of the time, manufacturers do usually use 99% similar engines, but a lot of the time it's displacement restricted. So when he was racing against Lauda had a 3-liter flat 12, but he had a 3-liter V8. So just some differences there.
Yeah.
But the one car I did want to talk about was the 6-wheeled car. Did you see it? There's only a couple shots of it.
Car.
It's a blue F1 car that had 6 wheels, 4 at the front and 2 at the back.
No, I didn't see that.
It was in a couple of shots, and I noticed it in the pit lane. It was pretty prominent because it was so weird, and this was a real F1 car.
Really? I mean, that doesn't even seem legal. I mean, everybody else has 4 wheels.
I mean, there wasn't wheel restrictions. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there was width.
There was width and height and all that stuff,
but not
number
of wheels.
You could have as many wheels as you wanted.
40 wheels.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Speed
the thing.
Racer and the
Mammoth car.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was the Tyrrell P34.
Okay.
It had a Cosworth 3-liter V8, just like the McLaren, and it had 4 wheels up front and 2 wheels at the back.
Weird. Why
So the
would they do
wheels
that?
were in line too, which is weird. It's not like a dually. It's not like
right.
They weren't next to each other. It was like in line.
Yeah.
And basically the idea behind this was the more wheels that it had, the more contact patch for tires, better grip.
Okay.
But you were only allowed like a certain amount of tire, I guess. So the 2 front wheels were 10 inches, 10-inch diameter wheels, which is insanely small.
Yeah.
So it had 2 10-inch wheels up front. And again, the idea behind this was bigger tire patches on the ground. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Also more braking surface area. So if you have 6 brakes working to stop the car instead of having 4 brakes to stop the car.
Yeah.
And one of the test drivers was quoted as saying the steering felt like it was power assisted, meaning the steering was so light because the friction was spread across 4 wheels instead of 2 wheels.
Okay.
He said it was actually it handled really, really well. The reason it didn't stick around was that it was no longer competitive because it was so heavy.
Okay.
You needed so much steering assembly for 2 extra wheels, and then you needed a shaft to connect the 2 front wheels in order for them to turn at the same rate.
Yeah.
And it was just more parts to break. It really messed with the simplicity of it all. And so it was very, very short-lived in F1. But for eagle-eye viewers, there was a 6-wheeled F1 car. And that was accurate to that race, which was really, really cool to see. So
that is that's pretty amazing. And I wonder, I was going to ask you why don't they do that anymore? But obviously,
I mean, just think about it. There's twice the amount of steering components that can break.
And wheels are heavy.
Wheels are heavy. Rotating mass always counts for about 5 times the amount of weight, or unsprung mass versus sprung mass. If that, like rotational, like basically, if you take 5 pounds off of your wheels, it's equivalent to taking 25 pounds out of the car.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why, like, my first RX-7 had those heavy wheels.
Yeah.
I mean, my Diamond Racing Steelies were like 47 pounds a wheel. I mean, they were heavy.
I know they were heavy. I picked
wheels.
those up.
Yeah.
And they were heavy.
Heavy wheels.
Yeah.
And so putting the car on the smaller wheels actually, it was so much faster.
Yeah.
Because each pound is worth 5 pounds.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And then, if you have a steering component, there's a if you have a steering component break and you're 3rd out of 6 wheels, it's just more parts to break. It's just more parts to break.
Absolutely,
and when you're pushing a car that hard, things are going to break. So, but I thought it was what?
And it looks goofy.
It looks goofy. It does look goofy.
Looks kind of goofy, yeah.
But I was really happy to see them put that in there because I had heard of that car, and I liked that just little touch for F1 fans. almost
is,
as like a shout out or an
yeah.
Easter egg to the true fans of the series.
Definitely something that, something that I missed, but I'm glad you caught that, and I appreciate them doing that.
I think the attention to detail of this movie was actually pretty high.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, it seemed like it.
So I just still can't get over the fact that you just really didn't like it that much.
No, I didn't like it at all, and it was because I couldn't get behind either character, so I felt lost. Because
I just soaked up the car stuff. I
Sure.
didn't really worry about the characters. I saw the cars going fast, and that
it's
pedals my little hamster wheel in my tiny man brain.
I think that's very interesting because for me, I guess I am more character driven and more like watching people and that stuff. I was interested with the car stuff, but honestly, when the guy got into the wreck, I literally felt nothing.
Really?
Oh gosh, no, I didn't feel anything at all. And I almost felt like, all right, you guys went out there. It's like if someone tells me that they're going to go climb Mount Everest. Okay, fine, go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever. If you get hurt, if you die climbing Mount Everest, that's on you. No one put a gun to your head and said, or you're not curing cancer by reaching the top of Mount Everest. If you were, then I would applaud you and say the effort was worth it. These guys get out in cars.
Yeah, it's extracurricular. It's not.
Yeah. It's
I
not like they're
get
saving any. They're not saving the universe by going out and driving a car.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no heroics here whatsoever.
I understand not really getting around the holier than thou mentality of the racers.
Well, it's that plus the fact combined with the fact that their attitude is like, that they're doing something wonderful and great and tremendous and all that. They're racing around a track. It's fun, great, have fun, but you're not doing anything for anyone in any realm except for yourself.
It's one big pissing contest. Yeah. And being a racing fan and having raced myself and been a part of all of that, it's the same thing. Yeah. And that's why, I of course have friends that race, and it's never going to be more than a hobby. We know someone who is trying to go pro at Spec Miata. Yeah. And it's just that's like trying to go pro at, I don't know, building Legos, which I guess a certain amount of people do. Yeah. But
here's the thing though, is that you can race and be a racer, and I know people that do this and not be a jerk your entire life off of the track.
Right.
I mean, at the time you're on the track, you got to have a big ego because...
Yeah, you got to have grit and you got to take command and
You have to when you're on the road, but when you're actually on the track and racing. But I guarantee there's a ton of race car drivers out there who are actually decent, nice, friendly people.
Oh, yeah.
But when they're behind the wheel, I totally get it. You have to be focused. You have to be because even the stupid stuff, not stupid, it was fun when we were racing the electric go-karts.
Shoot, what's that place called?
K1?
K1, yeah.
So we were racing these electric go-karts, and it was you, me, and your brother, Nick.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. You guys smoked me so bad.
Yeah.
And it was like, I felt, I was like, how could I possibly go faster? But when I was out there, that race was so intense that it was like everything in my body, the adrenaline was going, everything was going. And for that period of time, I had to be focused on me and what I was doing and had to feel like I was the best, fastest driver ever. But these guys, I was waiting for one of them to like break a little bit or change a little bit so that I could go, okay, that's the hero. That's the one I'm going to, watch. Yeah. That's the one I'm going to root for. I didn't root for either one of them. So when things happened to them, I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if you die. I don't care if you get hit by a plane that just comes out of the sky during the race.
I think
nothing.
I think your gripe with this movie stems out of how I think both of us, I know for sure how I feel about professional athletes.
Okay.
In the fact of like, I definitely have appreciation for like what football players can do.
Yeah.
The amount of muscle they have and stamina and stuff. But it's like, hey man, at the end of the day, you're pushing a little Nerf football up and down a field.
Yeah.
And like, you're not helping mankind.
Right.
And I'm not saying everyone has to help mankind, but like the ego should match, you should be humbled by the fact that you get to play with a children's toy in front of millions of people and you make millions of dollars.
Exactly. And I think
you should be humbled by that fact.
And that is exactly. You should be humbled by the fact. But it also showed in the race car companies and the Ferrari team, the Lamborghini. Well, there wasn't a Lamborghini.
There was not, no.
But there was a Ferrari team for sure.
Right, yeah. Ferrari, McLaren, big ones, yeah.
So, and they were just as much into this whole thing as the race car drivers were. And it was so serious to them. It's like, guys, I get it. It's a business for them.
Right.
There's more money on the line for advertisers and sponsors and things like that and all this stuff. I get that. But at the same time, again, it's car racing.
Yeah.
You're driving around a track.
I think the most interesting thing about you bringing up the character development and such is the fact that someone who's not into racing is not going to appreciate this movie.
Yes.
And the reason I bring that up is because, like I said, I mentioned on some podcast earlier, I went to go see Ford versus Ferrari, another racing movie with two girls who have no interest in cars at all, and they loved that movie.
Now, was there character development in that movie? Was there, characters you could root for?
I believe so, yes, but I'm interested in you watching it and seeing if you fall in love with the characters the same way I did.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of car movie characters are rough around the edges.
Yes.
And I think especially dealing with historical movies,
I
think we should watch Ford versus Ferrari very soon.
Okay, well,
I mean, you get to pick the next movie, so that's up to you.
I get to.
But it's very interesting that you say that. And I do actually have some recordings on here for the trivia of what F1 fans reacted to, because they screened this movie at, I believe, an F1 race. They screened it before it came out.
Okay.
And Ron Howard was there, and he screened it in front of a huge audience of F1 people.
Okay.
So we can talk about what they thought
That's
of
great.
the movie.
Notice, I don't have any notes. None for this one.
Yeah, you did notes twice, and then you were like, nah, never again.
No, it was
You're
because
a two-hit wonder.
It was because of this movie.
Oh.
This is how much I hated it. I was like, I'm not spending 1 second more of my life to make notes for this rotten, burning heap of a movie.
You want to know something kind of sad? Or like something that might agitate you?
Okay.
I considered rewatching it today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right?
Please don't tell me that.
I mean, I was going to continue my work anyway. I wasn't going to sit and rewatch it, but I considered throwing it up in the background.
Okay. All right. It's I mean, that's up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome that you, because the fact of the matter is, that's the wonderful thing about movies. There are some
it's so subjective.
Yes, absolutely. There are some really awful, bad movies out there that some people absolutely love. That they just are like, oh, I could watch that a million times. I could, and it's like, really, we are talking about the same movie, right?
Yeah.
And people will
People
say
just
that.
get different things out of different movies.
Absolutely.
So I like the fact that we can disagree on a movie.
Oh,
it's just I always feel bad when it's my movies that I pick.
Oh,
and
no.
you're like, because we talked briefly earlier, and you're like, I hated that movie, and I was like, oh, sorry for wasting 2 hours and 3 minutes of your time.
No, and what we said, and I said it too, was I love the fact that we can watch a movie and I can hate it.
Yeah.
I don't care if everyone you choose, I hate them, whatever. Yeah. Because I love movies. I love to watch movies. I love to analyze them. I love to get into them and stuff like that. So I really, that part of it is actually enjoying the fact that it was a different movie, something I would never have watched
very
myself.
different.
And no, it was all good. So I'm happy.
And the reason I chose
happy
this
to
movie,
hate the movie.
Yeah, well,
so yeah.
The reason I chose this movie was at the recording time, which is April. Shout out to August.
Shout out
because this is our first August episode, I believe.
Right.
I chose this movie because it was freshly put onto Netflix.
Oh, okay.
This month
Yeah.
of April. And so
It
the
might
reason
be going away.
that's the thing is
Yeah.
you saying this now and you're in August and you're like, hey, I can't find it on Netflix. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I chose it because all of my friends that are into F1, because a lot of my car friends are obviously into F1.
Yeah.
They were posting about it and they're like, thank God Rush has come back to Netflix.
Really?
Can't wait to rewatch it, all that stuff.
Wow. Okay.
So I think F1 fans really latch on to this movie.
Cool. Yeah, that's
which
great.
is good.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of the reasons that I like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Fast cars, cool shots,
Mm-hmm.
Good car noises. The sounds of this movie were fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, shout out to who did the soundtrack, which is Hans Zimmer.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's awesome.
So
yeah.
that's
yeah.
the thing. That's
All
the
right.
other thing is that you really didn't like this movie.
No.
And there were such big names attached to it.
Yeah. They
This
should
has
all
to
be ashamed of themselves.
I mean, well, like because we have obviously
I'm
Ron
kidding.
Howard,
I'm kidding.
Arrested Development star Ron Howard.
Well, yeah, he did a lot of but he did a lot of things. Cocoon, tons of movies.
Yeah, Apollo 13.
Yeah, Apollo 13. All that stuff. Yeah.
Ron Howard directed it. Obviously, huge name.
Yep.
In terms of
Yeah.
that. Nikon's creative director. Or
yeah.
he did
right.
like some like contest. I remember back when I was getting into cameras.
I'm not going to say it now, but let's jump back to Ron Howard in a minute. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, we have Daniel Bruhl, who I love. He played Niki Lauda.
Yeah.
I love him. Anything he's in, he
Really?
kills the role.
I mean, he did. He was very intense. There's no two ways about it. I will give
Yeah.
that to both actors. They were into their roles
Yes.
so far that there wasn't even a millisecond that I thought these guys weren't the actual people on the screen.
And he was in Inglourious Bastards.
Was he?
Yes.
I haven't
he
seen
played
that
one of
movie.
the Germans. He always plays German roles.
Are there cars in that movie? Because then we could watch it.
I don't think so. Maybe a military Jeep.
Okay. All right. So, yeah.
But he was actually
plays
born in
also-
Spain, which is interesting.
Wow,
His,
okay.
I believe his mom or dad is from Brazil.
Okay.
But
and,
he always plays German roles. And he knows German very
all
well.
right. All righty.
He was also the German voice of Lightning McQueen from
No.
Cars in the German release.
Wow.
Yes, which I thought was cool.
Okay. That's
But the reason I love him so much
yeah.
is because, one, he always brings an insane intensity to the roles.
Yeah,
I've never
he-
seen
he
him
was
play like a
intense, yeah.
comedic role or anything. He's
Yeah.
always super. Oh, he was in Captain America: Civil War.
Okay.
Yeah, so he played one of the German bad guys, the
Mhm.
Red Skull or whatever.
Yes.
One of Red Skull's henchmen or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then I watched an interview with him, and he came to a college. I want to say it was like Cambridge or something.
Yeah.
Some big college.
Yeah.
But he was doing a Q&A, and someone was like, oh, how'd you, like, what's the hardest thing about acting or what all this stuff? And he took so much time and effort into all of his answers.
Really?
And he was like super kind. Like he
Mhm.
answered the same question a couple times and like never like mentioned the fact that he was repeating his answer. He just like he really took the time with all these college students in this one interview that I watched.
That's awesome.
And so and all the comments were like, I didn't realize this guy's like this guy's so nice. Like I've only heard good
That's
things about
awesome.
this guy.
Yeah,
And so
that's
it's just
awesome.
one of those like Hollywood guys that you like to see that like you said at the beginning, I would like to imagine I could get a beer with him
Yeah.
and he would be thoughtful and
Yeah, that
and
sounds-
and
yeah.
you know.
That's cool.
But yeah, you wanted to get back to Ron Howard?
Yeah. So I actually acted in a movie for Ron Howard.
Oh, you did.
I did.
You
did.
did.
The Dilemma. It was a comedy movie. It was shot in Chicago,
yeah.
and I went. I was an extra. So
Did you
I
see
I
him in
acted
person?
in it. Oh yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So it was weird to see
Yeah.
him. It was weird to see him running around the set. He's super intense on the set. And it's weird to see him like that close. Like he was as close to me as I am to you,
Wow.
which is about maybe
Yeah.
what 6-8 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he just just whizzed by me, and then I saw him sitting in his chair and looking at the daily, well, not the dailies anymore, but watching the monitor
Yeah.
as everything was shot. I was it was supposed to be a car show, and the main actors were
Was it
coming
at
through.
McCormick
Vince Vaughn.
Place?
Yeah, it was at
Oh,
McCormick
wow,
Place.
okay.
So Vince Vaughn and Kevin.
Don't say Spacey.
No, it's not Kevin Spacey.
I was gonna say.
No, Vince Vaughn and Kevin. I can't remember his name. Very famous actor did.
Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
Yes,
Kevin James. Kevin James.
Thank you. So they were there. Saw them all day, Very, very interesting thing, by the way, if you've ever had the opportunity to be an extra.
Yeah.
Very bizarre. You might as well shoot yourself in the head because of the fact that you are absolutely cattle.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You are amazingly nothing to the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are so far left out of the film that it's unbelievable. Anyway, so I was there, and that was a weird experience, though. So I have to say that, yes, I acted in a Ron Howard movie.
Acted is a bit of a stretched word. No, I would say you were there.
I stood there and had to pretend like I was looking through a brochure at the car show. That is acting, my friend. That is acting.
Do you remember at all any cars around you or what brochure you were looking at?
No, not at all. No.
Dang it.
No, I wish I did.
And what year was this?
It was around, I want to say 2000, maybe 2010. Like between jobs, because
so
I
this
know
was
I wasn't
like,
working.
Because this was shot in 2012, 2013. You
Oh,
could have
so
stopped this movie from happening. One swift kick to the head, and you could have stopped this entire film from even happening.
Wow, yeah, that's true. I could have.
So really, this is your fault.
Oh wow, you know, I knew you were gonna go there.
This is your fault.
Somehow,
this is your own fault.
Somehow,
you had the opportunity.
Somehow. You were going to make it my fault.
It always is.
It was always I'm the one. I'm the bad guy.
You know what? We should go back and watch The Dilemma.
We should. Actually,
if there's a car show scene and break it down.
Yeah, it's actually so I'm on the cutting room floor. I never made it into the final movie. But you know who made it into the
Who?
Edmund Coisan.
Oh, of course he did.
Yeah. So anyway,
shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
No shout out. Shout out.
No, so
stole
he
my
made
dad's
it,
spotlight.
Yeah, he was in the. He was actually like I think a doorman.
You know who else
something.
didn't make it in the movie?
Who?
Craig Lieberman. Shout out at 46 minutes.
Yeah, the Craig Lieberman.
Craig Lieberman.
Absolutely.
So do we want to get into trivia?
Yeah, we can get into trivia. I think I do want to say one other thing about the movie that I thought was I thought this was really cool.
Say it.
Wow, just let me talk here. Okay. No, what I thought was really, really cool and ingenious was the fact that this was based on two actual people, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the movie, when they're talking about what happens in their life after this big, climax to the movie, and they talk about them, while the actors are talking about them, they show clips of the real people.
Right, yeah.
Which I thought was a great cinematic tool.
And
it was awesome.
We'll get into it with the trivia. There's actually some blending that goes in.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
We'll get into it. But I do like the fact that they acknowledge the real people.
Yes.
Yes. Niki Lauda passed away in 2018, I believe.
Oh, did he?
2019.
Oh, that's
and then James Hunt passed away in like 93.
Yeah, he was only 40 something.
Some heart attack. And I mean, like, if you watch the movie, you kind of understand
how
he had a heart attack.
It's not
at
a
43.
surprise. Shocker.
I mean, it's like drugs, it's alcohol, it's smoking,
women, it's everything.
Yeah, it's everything.
Women are the thing that are
women will kill all men.
Yeah.
But 100%. But
so.
Yeah, so
yeah.
I agree with you there. I thought it was very cool.
That was a neat. That was
and
a
I do
neat
have
trick. That was
in
a neat
here
neat tool.
the real Niki Lauda's thoughts on the movie, which is exciting.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, let's go to
let's get into the trivia.
Yep.
Start off. So in an interview with Austrian Times on the occasion of his 60th birthday, this is the real Niki Lauda. Niki Lauda stated that a journalist asking him how his injured face affected his marriage was the biggest insult he ever had to suffer in his entire life.
So that was real.
Wow. I don't know if James Hunt beating the crap out of him in the closet was real. Although I did get goosebumps when that happened, and I was like, that was a redeeming moment for James Hunt. He beat that reporter up for Niki Lauda because of, I mean, getting asked that question. I mean,
that is the dumbest. That guy should be fired.
So that was a real question, though. Now knowing that, I mean,
okay, knowing that guy should have been fired and got everything he deserved as far as
there had to have been a moment on set where they're like, we wouldn't even have written this,
right?
Like, there's no reason we would have written it, but because it did happen,
it's
just so insane.
It's so unbelievably cruel that you can't fathom someone
Yeah.
actually saying that, especially not a professional. I know that. Now, the one thing is that I know, and they portrayed this in the movie, that the press really hounded race car drivers
Mm-hmm.
for their relationships, because for James Hunt
the
and his girlfriend, his
he
wife,
found out he was getting a divorce through the
yes,
paper. Yeah.
exactly. So that does ring true, that they try to drum up anything they can,
Yeah.
and the sleazy people,
Yeah.
the sleazy reporters are like, well, let's see if we can trip this guy up on his
Mhm.
marriage or whatever. But it is the most awful,
Yeah.
horrific,
And,
terrible thing you could say to somebody.
and if you
It's like-
haven't seen the movie and you don't plan on it, but you like to listen to the podcast, thank you.
Yep.
But also, basically what happens is Niki Lauda's in a car accident or in a racing accident.
Yeah.
Car lights on fire, and he burns most of his face.
yes,
Which actually truly happened, and you see the older pictures of Niki Lauda.
Yes,
you
you do.
can tell.
Yep.
But one of his first races back, he's in a press conference, and a reporter asks if I'm forgetting the words exactly, but basically like, how does your wife feel? Like, how is your wife still attracted to you with that horrible
Yep.
face?
yeah,
Essentially. And so that was a real question, which I found shocking
mhm.
through the trivia.
yes.
Next up, again, this trivia is brought to you by, but in no way sponsored by IMDb. So take this as you will.
Yep, exactly.
So the second piece of trivia, the James Hunt Niki Lauda 1976 race depicted in the film was the last Formula One event staged on Germany's notorious Nürburgring, since the lap was deemed far too hazardous. So do you know anything about the Nürburgring?
No.
Okay, so it's like probably the most famous racetrack in the world. The Nürburgring is almost 13 miles to complete one lap.
Wow.
It's huge. It's a giant racetrack in Germany.
But is it an oval, or is when they call it a ring? It's
No,
just
it has like 300 turns or something.
Okay, okay.
I don't remember the amount of turns.
13 miles.
But it's I think 13 or 13 and a half
That's
miles
pretty amazing.
for one lap, and
Yeah.
it's all zigzags. It's all like it is a ring shaped, but
Okay.
there's very little straight sections.
Okay.
And it's a notoriously dangerous track, because if you think about it, like I'm thinking of like Audubon Country Club, right,
Mhm.
where we typically
Yes.
race.
Right.
The South track has 11 turns.
Okay.
So you have to memorize 11 turns. You have to memorize, okay, letting off throttle at this turn, getting back on throttle, what gear to be in, all of this
Mhm.
stuff you have to memorize, which line, where to put the car, where to
Mhm.
angle the car for every turn, right? You have to remember 11 of those turns for Audubon.
Yeah.
For the Nürburgring, you have 13 miles of turns to try to remember.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you misremember one turn, you're going into the bushes, you're going into the wall, and there's a lot of elevation change, which is
Okay.
very dangerous for
All right.
racing.
Yeah.
Because if you come around a corner that's banked to the right, but your car the weight is on the left, it really unsettles it,
Now-
and you get lift off oversteer and all that stuff.
That brings up an interesting point. Did you catch that? There's a scene where the F1 caught air, actually
yeah.
lifted. How can that happen? Does
Common,
that happen?
very common.
Really?
Yeah, and things like that, because of all of
Okay.
the air damming on the bottom of the cars.
Okay.
In order to make the cars as slippery as possible, basically, and a friend of mine, Ben, actually did this to his RX-7 that he races in series. They try to make the bottoms as flat as possible. They put under trays on them that
Oh.
are flat. So
Okay.
in order to for aerodynamics, it's slippery, so the air doesn't get caught on the differential, and
Gotcha.
the air
okay.
doesn't get caught on all the components underneath. It helps the car go
Okay.
faster.
Yeah.
However, if you go fast enough,
Yeah.
and the wind catches it right,
Mm-hmm.
that flat-bottomed car
Mm-hmm.
is now no different than an airplane wing.
Yeah.
And so air
Mhm.
gets under it, and it just lifts the car. I mean, there's a very famous video of a Mercedes, I want to say CLK GTR, that comes over a hill, and it literally is like a piece of paper and just starts tumbling up through
I'm
the
sure
air.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
So
Well,
it
I just thought it was interesting because I've never seen an actual race car catch air during a race. But
it
I'm
definitely
sure it
happens. From my understanding, it's not like an everyday thing, obviously, because that would be hell on suspension.
Yeah.
But it definitely happens, and especially in higher level racing because they have those flat bottoms.
Okay.
Our spec Miatas have to have factory everything on the bottom, so it's all if you put it in a wind tunnel, it's like it's like a canyon.
Yeah.
It's so many crevasses and stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, that can happen. Catching air, and it's not super uncommon to happen. But it can end up being pretty bad.
Okay. All right.
But getting past the Nürburgring, back to trivia. Daniel Bruhl and Niki Lauda became good friends. So the guy who played him became good friends with the actual real Niki Lauda. Lauda even flew the actor to Sao Paulo Grand Prix in his private jet, in which he piloted himself. So Niki Lauda was a real pilot as well and had thousands of hours flying.
They show that in the movie.
At the end of the
at
movie.
The end, they
which
show that.
They touched on, but Niki Lauda had like a fleet of... he owned Lauda Air. Like he had like a fleet of planes after his F1 career.
Well, so let me jump back into that. That's very interesting trivia. So first of all, if he was a pilot and he became friends with James Hunt, then in my book, it would have been redeeming to me, and again, just from my point of view, if they would have alluded to that in the movie, where at some point, these enemies who have thrived off of their rivalry.
Yeah, well, this trivia fact was the actor that played Niki Lauda and Niki Lauda became friends, not that James Hunt. Okay. So the guy who played him, But getting back to that point, I did kind of like that banter that they had. It was almost very Batman-esque.
Yes.
Where it was like...
You mean at the end?
With the Joker.
Yeah,
and he's like,
yeah.
I don't want to... Well, speaking of the Joker, where he tells Batman, he's like, I don't want to kill you.
Right.
I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one.
Right.
There was a very that sort of esque moment at the end where it's like, I need you and you need me. But then I believe Niki Lauda ended his career after that. I don't think he went back to F1. He might have done one more season.
Yeah, he might have done another
James
season.
Hunt did like 2 or 3 more seasons, and then that was it.
He was more of a broadcaster, according to the movie.
Right.
He became a broadcaster and then just kind of went about doing his stuff.
Excuse you. Jeez.
Wow.
This is the No Edits podcast,
Cinema
by
Verite.
the way. So, yeah.
This is podcast Verite.
Yeah.
So, what was I going to say? So, the last part of that movie, when they start talking at the very end and they're in the airport hangar.
Yeah. What are the odds?
Right.
What are the odds?
What are the odds?
Oh,
exactly.
It just happened to run into my friend. Yeah.
I've got a plane parked 50 feet away from your plane
Yeah.
at some random airport somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are the odds of them running? So, what I thought was that entire part of the movie was really contrived. I thought that was like, oh my gosh, here we go. They're going to go on their diatribe and blah, blah, blah. You're my enemy, but you made me stronger. And it's all. And it was like, I get that. I already understand that from this awful 2 hours that I've spent watching you two. Yeah, it's the only thing that drove you two to do what you did is you hated each other, your rivalry. I get it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to say it's good to have rivals and enemies, blah, blah, blah.
See,
so it made me angry.
I 50% agree with you. Okay. I think there were some things that could have been left unsaid, and I think I did like that ending scene where they did confront each other not on a racetrack.
Yeah.
I thought it put a nice little bow on the end of it.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you that I think the talking went on for a little bit too long. It was just like, all right, let's wrap it up. Like, just agree to disagree, and let's keep it moving.
Yes, it was too obvious.
Yeah.
And it was,
Or they should have played into the fact that in real life, Niki Lauda and James Hunt were friends in real life.
So, okay, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is if that was the fact. I realize the other trivia you're saying was Niki Lauda and the actor. But if that's true, then yes, it would have been nice. To me, it would have been a more satisfying ending to a movie. That's one of the main things in making movies is You always, always, always need to make a satisfying ending. That doesn't mean it's a happy ending. It doesn't mean that it's a sad ending.
Yeah.
It just means that the outcome is something that the viewer can live with.
Yeah.
That makes them go, okay, yeah, I get it. That's the way it should be. Okay. Satisfying. It's a satisfying ending. That's all you're supposed to do. This to me was not satisfying because it was like if you would have shown them not like, hey, buddy, hey, we're buddies, not like a musical montage
like,
of them.
like an 80s sitcom, like, yeah.
Hey, we're
now I get that. I get that, but I wish there was kind of like a nod to the fact that like they didn't want to rip each other's throats out, and I feel like they left it kind of open-ended of like, oh, I'll catch you next season. Like they kind of had that vibe of like, oh, I'll get you next season to be champion, but like at the end of the day, like, oh, there wasn't really another like in real life there wasn't another season.
No, and that really was it. That was the end. So for me, there wasn't closure, and for me, there wasn't a satisfying ending.
Yeah,
so
I get that.
All right.
Next up for trivia, Daniel Bruhl, again, who played Niki Lauda, wore a dental appliance to mimic Niki Lauda's overbite in the movie.
Oh,
which
really?
I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is it, because he did have an overbite. Yeah.
Which actually, if you look at pictures, they went real easy with the overbite in the movie.
Really?
The pictures in real life, kid had some chompers.
Wow. Okay.
For sure. So
okay.
They actually sort of played it down for the movie. But I thought, like, I have so much more respect for actors that, like, have to deal with, like, a mouth appliance for the entire filming of a movie. Mm-hmm. Like, that's got to be grueling.
If you ever want to really appreciate something someone's gone through, Jim Carrey. No, who's the guy who was the guy who played he played the Grinch.
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
I was thinking
the amount of makeup he went through for the Grinch.
But he also wore special contacts.
Yeah.
He said that were extremely painful, and it took forever to do their makeup.
There was a FBI agent on set of the Grinch that taught Jim Carrey what torture techniques.
Oh, yes, I remember
how to
it.
withstand torture techniques.
Yes.
Because it took 8 hours to get into that makeup each time.
Yeah.
Which is So I have serious respect for people that do that. And the crazy thing is, if you've ever seen Jim Carrey do the Grinch face without the makeup, that's all his face.
Is it?
He can shape his face. Real
weird.
It's
pretty weird how he can do
without
that.
the makeup. You can even tell.
Yeah. But interesting. But I do appreciate that when actors are able to do that, and so that is.
And what's his face that played the Godfather?
Oh,
dated Marilyn Monroe, I think. Not Joe DiMaggio. I'm just thinking that we didn't start the fire. Who played the Godfather?
Godfather was played
Gilbert
by
Godfrey. You came to me. I can't even do it, Godfrey.
Someday.
Yeah. There's a guy on TikTok that does a spot-on Godfrey impression.
That's hilarious.
I'll send it to you.
Definitely. So,
whoever played the Godfather.
Marlon
Brando.
Yes, Marlon Brando. Why can't I think
apparently they put cotton balls in his mouth.
Did they? For
in
real?
His cheeks.
For real?
To make him look more like a bulldog. That's what my film teacher in high school told me.
Interesting. I mean, it could be true. I don't know. It always looked like, and when actors try to portray it, they do like puff up their cheeks and stuff. So So I have mad respect for all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
So next trivia fact.
Yep.
Despite having to bend the truth in some areas, the film was warmly received by most discerning critics, namely the Formula One industry. When Rush was pre-released and screened at the German Grand Prix in July of 2013, the audience comprised of a group of F1 drivers, team bosses, and British motorsports magazine aficionados. Director Ron Howard declared that the experience was the toughest reality test since screening his Apollo 13 film for NASA astronauts and mission controllers in 1995. Nevertheless, Rush received a standing ovation.
Wow.
Again, though, you have to remember that this is all F1 people that saw their sport, their livelihood, in a very cool, very well-shot manner. I don't think they were taking notes about character development during the screening. I mean, you're at the Grand Prix and watching a movie about F1 racing.
Well, if that is your life, And
Yeah.
you probably go, yeah, I don't maybe I didn't know Nicky Lauda, but man, I know guys just like him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, racers like him. I know all this stuff. Yeah. Okay. That does kind of spark one of my memories though of the film. Yeah.
What?
Was and maybe this is true, but I didn't find it to be very realistic when Nicky Lauda, when he first goes into his first group of mechanics,
Yeah.
and he talks to him, and he's like, and they like, well, we couldn't get the engine any lighter,
Yeah.
he didn't have that
Yeah,
accent, but I
yeah.
just threw that in for dramatic
nice.
effect.
You're
But then
real
he goes-
regular.
But then Nicky Lauda goes, "Did you try magnesium?" And
yeah, that
that kinda
seems a
stuff-
little far fetched.
to me, that kind of stuff, obviously, if you were a mechanic and you lived to build cars,
Yeah.
you would have tried. It was like saying, did you try putting wheels on the car? Did
Yeah,
you try
there-
putting wheels? I mean, things that go round, they're spinny things.
Yeah, there's very few instances in the car world of like unknowns.
Right.
Basically, like I know how to make my engine in my RX-7 way better.
Yeah.
I know how to make it run better. I know
Right.
how to make it faster. I know
Right.
how to do all that stuff. It's just money and time.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not worth. I could make that car a ton faster for about 10 grand.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm a child. I don't have 10 grand. So like, like the idea of him walking in and being like, "Oh, did you try this?"
right.
Very
Did you try
far fetched.
magnesium like heads or whatever. I was like, well, I'm sure. And the look that the guy gave him,
Yeah.
it was like,
Also, if he's talking about engine parts,
yeah,
you don't just like whip one up. Like that's like
Right.
machining, that's milling, that's especially messing with a new type of material. We've
Yeah.
only really switched materials once for engines. There's
Okay.
iron blocks, and then
Yeah.
now there's aluminum blocks.
okay, yeah, pretty much.
That's about it.
Yeah.
That's about it. And I could be wrong. Maybe back in F1 in the early 70s, maybe there was a lot of room for experimentation and not a lot known. But I find it hard to believe that. I don't know that. Yeah. So I agree with you.
It was one of those things where they said, oh well, he's good with I forgot what they called tuning the cars or whatever. He's good with the
That
cars.
part I agree with.
Okay.
And where they tuned it, and he's
Yeah.
like, "I bet you it goes 2 seconds faster."
Yeah.
That's real.
Okay, but again, he was talking to them about very basic things
Yeah.
that people who build cars would already know.
Right. I understand the whole, I guess, character development of like, oh, you have to show the audience this guy
Right,
knows
show-
what he's talking about.
yes,
He
yeah.
doesn't just drive; he
Right.
knows the schematics of
Exactly.
it. And I did like the contrast between James Hunt. James Hunt never gave any of those notes.
no.
He was just like, "Car go fast."
Yeah.
And
And
like
then-
that's pretty much it. So
Right.
like I like the fact that
that's
Nicky
true.
Lauda was this more analytical,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. And he was
And I guess
just-
that was a way to the filmmaker's way of showing.
right.
it.
And James Hunt was more like, cargo fast. No, piece of crap now. You make it piece of crap.
Yeah. So
And I think that's how he actually talked in the
Yeah.
movie.
like Groot. The fact that they still make Vin Diesel come in and
Yeah.
record Groot lines is
yeah.
weird.
I'll do it for half the money.
Yeah, I'll do it for a quarter of the money.
Right.
Moving on here, Chris Hemsworth auditioned for James Hunt's role while filming The Avengers in 2012.
Really?
And
Okay.
impressed Ron Howard so much that he was signed instantly,
Wow.
which
Very
is
cool.
impressive.
Yeah.
This one was really cool and gave me goosebumps when I read it. One of the racing drivers to pull Nicky Lauda out of the wrecked car in real life was Guy Edwards. His name was Guy Edwards.
Oh.
His son, Sean Edwards, played him in the film.
Wow.
So
really?
yeah, so the guy who pulls the actor for Nicky Lauda
Yeah.
out of the car in the movie
Yeah.
was the son of the real guy that pulled Nicky Lauda out of the real car.
Wow. Oh,
I
that's
thought
very
that
cool.
was really,
Yeah.
really cool.
That's
and,
great
like,
trivia. That's very cool.
Yeah, and
I
like
like that,
getting
yeah.
someone like he was barely credited, and he had like 2 seconds of screen time. But like,
it's
I'm
totally
sure
cool.
being able to act that, like having your dad who
Yeah.
actually passed away in a racing accident like a
Oh,
year
wow.
later.
Wow.
So yeah, he grew up with this story of his dad, and then he
Yep.
got to
Got to
play
do
the
it.
part. Was super, super cool.
That is cool. They got to do it. Yeah.
So this is getting back to that point part that we were talking about where I said they kind of mixed the real guys and the
right.
actors.
Okay.
So in the Haviline ad near the end of the film,
Yeah.
you hear James Hunt's voice, but you see Chris Hemsworth's face. So that advertisement for the oil,
No.
that's James
was
Hunt's. That's a real advertisement from James Hunt. They just refilmed it with Chris Hemsworth's face.
What's so funny about that is that it's such a bad commercial.
Yeah.
And it's so poorly read that I thought, wow, why is Chris doing it that way? I call him Chris, Mr. Hemsworth, whatever. Why was he reading it so poorly and
so deadpan?
Yeah, and so exactly. And I thought, so that's funny that was an actual real commercial.
Yeah.
And that James Hunt was so deadpan like that. That's awful. I mean, that was like
So
wow.
it's impressive that you
that
brought
is
that
impressive. That was cool.
Peter Morgan wrote the script for Rush on spec or speculation, meaning that there was no one waiting to buy it. So he wrote his first draft, assuming that there might not even be any racing sequences at all because of the prospect a film would probably have a very low budget. If you grew up, he's quoted as saying, if you grew up in England, that's just how you thought. He said, instead, he structured the film as a race of sorts between the two main characters. So it was originally written to not really have any racing scenes in terms of budget. And, of course, Ron Howard stepped in and got a budget. But I'm very curious as to what sort of movie that would have been with no car scenes.
Well,
And we're both yawning and burping at the same time. Sorry, if you need to go up and get some snacks or stand up and stretch your legs, now is the time.
Yeah, if you're the dog that needs to go.
Yeah, if you need to let yourself
out.
Bark, bark.
So
I thought that was interesting, that it was written originally, the screenplay was written on basically hopes and dreams. It was just a guy writing it and hoping that a studio picked it up, and thank God a good one did.
A lot of absolutely, definitely, and a lot of scripts are written that way on spec, and a lot are written just in hopes and dreams that someone would pick it up somewhere.
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of scripts are written like that.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is something too. I could actually see that movie with very little actual racing scenes. I could see them doing things because you could do that. You could actually make it where there wasn't much. Yeah.
I didn't record the budget, but I have to assume it was so big, because I don't know if I put it in here for the trivia, but a lot of the cars were actually privately owned race cars.
Oh, were they?
And they were driven by their owners for insurance reasons.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But yeah, I mean, like, they used a lot of the actual race cars from the 70s.
Yes.
But now they're all in private collections. They're, Team McLaren doesn't keep their cars.
It's funny because Ron Howard is actually known for using footage of Apollo 13, I think. Was it Apollo 13? Using, like, recreating footage.
Yeah.
Using
which he did a lot for the crashes in this movie, but yeah.
Yeah. So, exactly. So it was like, okay, a lot of times it wasn't stock footage he was using. He wasn't pulling Getty images or whatever.
Yeah, Getty images, jeez.
Yeah, it wasn't like, pulling up something like that to...
which is funny because Arrested Development, when they start to mention the previous seasons, they have like the stock image watermark over it, which is funny.
Did you see though that watermark said it's like property of another studio, which I think they had to do for legal reasons.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they actually had to do. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe there was a joke that Ron Howard was just saying.
I never knew if that was a joke in Arrested Development.
It was
shout
funny.
out Arrested Development. Great show.
Absolutely. And Ron Howard, brilliant. I mean, Ron Howard. We could go on and do an entire podcast just on Ron Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing, lucky guy.
Yeah.
Extremely lucky in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Jumped on a whole bunch of things. Now, not saying that he's not gifted. He's tremendously gifted.
And he works incredibly hard.
Yes, he does.
But he's had some stuff that were zeros that really popped off to be tens.
Yeah. There's been a bunch of stuff, but he also grew up. I mean, he obviously was Andy Griffith's show. And when he was doing stuff like that and doing it as a child actor, he was making movies with a Super 8 camera.
Yeah.
But his playground and the place he got to do it was the Universal Studios lots.
Oh yeah, well.
So he was making westerns in real westerns lots. I mean, obviously with his friends and other actors and things like that, but he was able to do that and make movies all the way along and all the way through.
Yeah.
And yes, he was an actor and has acted in a lot of movies, but also he had that ability to be there and all of that. So tremendous talent. There's no two ways about that.
Ron Howard's fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
Getting on here with trivia. Originally, Paul Greengrass was a board director on the development stage for Rush. Greengrass, though he would eventually swap feature film projects with Ron Howard, who was set to direct Captain Phillips.
Oh,
Captain
okay.
Phillips, which another huge movie.
Yeah, exactly, right.
During its developmental stage at the time, Greengrass came to the helm at Captain Phillips instead, and Howard went on board to helm Rush in replacement of Greengrass. I guess is Howard Greengrass.
Yeah.
Or no, Paul Greengrass, sorry.
Oh.
But yeah, that's very interesting. They swapped projects, which both ended up being, arguably Rush was the smaller of the two movies.
Yes.
With
right.
Captain Phillips, the Somali pirate film that's
Yep.
quoted literally so much,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the one scene of the "I am the captain now."
Yeah.
I mean, that meme gets sent around probably daily in my friend group. So I thought that was interesting that they swapped and they made these two huge movies.
Yes. Yeah. It would have been interesting to see, though, if someone else directed Rush and how that would have changed it and how it would have been.
You'd be mad at someone else?
I would be living
Yeah,
at
no,
else.
it's what?
And Rush, there was no music in this. There was no Rush, the music group in here.
Oh,
I was expecting.
My God. Well, I skipped
2112.
over it, but the
All
music from Rush was composed by Hans Zimmer
Oh.
and was named Lost But One.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hans Zimmer also did, Interstellar.
Oh,
he did
he's done so many things.
He's done so many. You know what? He did a masterclass, one of those masterclass.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah. Which I almost did. I almost bought the masterclass for music production,
Really?
just because Hans Zimmer did it.
Yeah.
And the commercial would play before all the YouTube videos,
Mhm.
and I never skipped it ever.
Really?
The way that he spoke.
Really?
And then he played piano, and he's like, he played a note, and he's like, well, there's a question. And then he played another note, and he's like, there's your answer. And he was like doing this like call and response,
Really?
not verbally, but with the piano, and it
Mhm.
fascinated me.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time I've seen this commercial, it for never buying the product,
right?
but
Yeah.
I would just sit and watch, and to the point where I went to Masterclass's website.
Mhm.
And I looked at it, and then I was like, $105, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't like the
I
commercial
totally-
that much. But
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
Hans Zimmer is a god amongst men in my book.
He actually did, of course, one of his most famous was
It's so famous you can't even think of it.
It's so famous. That is how famous
Yeah.
it is. No,
You
it
can't
was
even say it. It's
no,
like the
it
Ark
was,
of the Covenant. You can't look at it.
I can't. No, it was Miami Vice.
Oh,
He did-
wow.
yes.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Hans
Yeah.
Zimmer?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And that was one of his super first
Yeah.
everyone got to know him because
The
of
man
that,
is
yeah.
incredibly good.
Yeah.
So that brings me
Very
back to my
cool.
point, though, of this is a star-studded
It
cast,
was.
and you still don't.
And I
okay.
still hate it. I still hate the
All right.
movie.
All
I
right.
hate it with
I'm not
the
blaming you.
intensity of a million
Yeah,
stars. Okay.
All right. So I found this interesting.
Okay.
In the German dubbed version of the film,
Yeah.
Daniel Bruhl dubbed his own voice.
Did
so
he really?
did the whole German one too. He did the dub of himself.
Because it does obviously speak German.
Yeah, very fluently.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't put it in here, but I did see that Daniel Bruhl spent a month in Austria before the film in order to get the accent down because Niki Lauda's from Austria.
Ah,
interesting.
okay, very cool. Yeah.
And to us Americans, Germans and Austrians are the same thing, but they are definitely not.
Okay.
So yeah. The number 5 Lotus car that
Mhm.
appeared in the film was
Yeah.
also seen competing at the historic Grand Prix in Monaco in Iron Man 2. The exact same
Oh, was
car.
it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
The car was driven
right.
by its owner, Chris Locke, in both occasions.
Wow.
So this guy's been in 2 movies just for
Wow.
owning an old
Yeah.
F1 car,
All right.
which is pretty neat. I always like seeing crossovers like that. Like we
Yeah, it
talked
is
about
fun.
with Back to the Future. What was that? van?
there's a I
super
can't remember.
van
The
or whatever?
super van,
Yeah.
super van, which has been in like 5 or 6 different movies,
Yeah.
which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a hero car, I don't think, in any of them, except for the movie Super Van.
Right, yeah, of course.
But anyway, so yeah, it's fun.
So last one.
Yeah.
So it says Niki Lauda died May 20th, 2019 from renal failure and complications. He enjoyed the film Rush 2013 a great deal, and his only wish for the film was that James Hunt was still alive to enjoy the movie as much as he did.
Wow.
Because he said, I watched a couple interviews and stuff, and he said that if James Hunt was alive, he would have been over the moon at how he was portrayed and really happy with the film.
That's cool.
Which just goes to show, one, how well the movie was received, but two, just how much, how true it was. I mean, like, you know, the fact that he didn't think that James Hunt would be pissed off about how much of a playboy he was shown off as. But
yeah, and he definitely was. I mean, there were so many parts of that where you go, oh, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, when they showed him with all the women, it was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
but
sure,
I guess, but I think what happened was, for those parts of the movie, they just followed Chris Hemsworth around and in his regular life.
Yeah.
They just said, well, we'll follow you
that's
around.
my girlfriend's celebrity crush is Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
I mean, he's my celebrity crush, too.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean,
geez, I'd risk it all. I'd risk it all for Chris Hemsworth. My God. Thor?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Yeah.
Which also, he lost a bunch of weight for this movie in between.
Oh, he did?
Because this was filmed after the Avengers and before the next Thor movie.
Oh, wow.
And he had to lose a bunch of weight for this movie to fit in the cars and stuff.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which
All
also
right.
another trivia fact that I, for some reason, didn't copy, but I always remember them. They could not drive the Formula 1 cars, Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl, so they outfitted Formula 3 cars with the body kits of Formula 1 cars.
Really?
Yeah, which I'm like, that's still a race car. Like, that's still not easy to drive.
Right.
It just makes a lot less power.
Right.
And is a lot they're not even easier to drive. I mean, they're still shoving you into a tiny little monocoque and.
Yeah. So what's a Formula 2 car? Is there a Formula 2? Because there's Formula 3, right? Is there like a Formula 16? It's go karts.
Well,
or
basically,
push cars, pedal
it's
cars?
like the stepped up.
I need to know.
Formula 1 is like the top.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a Formula 2. I mean, I can hop on the Googles real quick, or
the
Bing,
Google,
or
the
whatever.
Bings.
Duck, duck,
You
go,
can
go,
Bing
go,
it,
goose, or whatever.
DuckDuckGo, yeah. We're just calling them all out. If anyone wants to sponsor, just calling them out there.
All right, Formula 2.
Yes.
Oh yeah, FIA Formula 2 Championship.
Okay.
Formula 2 Championship is second-tier single-seater racing championship organized by the Federation Internationale del Automobile. Championship was introduced. The championship was introduced in 2017.
Oh wow!
So
okay,
it's relatively
it is pretty new. Yeah.
Following the rebranding of the long-term Formula 1 feeder series GP2. So there's Grand Prix 2.
Oh, Grand Prix. Yeah.
There's all different series
Yeah.
and stuff and whatnot. But that's basically usually how F1 drivers go. Is they kart as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
They go kart as a kid.
Yeah.
And then they move up through GP or Formula 3 and then move into Formula. It's basically a tiered process. The higher the number, the lower the tier it is. So like you said, Formula 16 would be like RC cars in a cul-de-sac. So
right, exactly, yeah. No, that's
and then I don't know where Formula E really stands right now.
Oh, that's right.
Which is the
yeah,
electric
that's right.
series.
The electric series. Forgot about
I don't
that.
know where that is in terms of.
Yep.
I'm sure people move back and forth, left, right, up and down.
Yep.
I mean, there's no set path to Formula 1, but that just seems to be kind of the typical one. They're kind of feeder championships. No one stays in Formula 3 forever. You know what I mean? Like, that's like...
Unless you really suck, I guess.
But like at that point, like, you just kind of give up. Like,
Okay.
it's really just a feeder. Like, that's like, you don't eat Happy Meals forever. You either...
You don't?
You either
Really?
order a real adult meal
All
or
right.
you just go elsewhere.
Okay.
So...
No, I get that. That's fine. I understand.
So now we have to get to the pivotal question that I know
you
your
know the answer.
to.
You already
is
know
would
the answer.
you change the channel?
Oh gosh, yes. I would change it
fast.
so blindingly fast that even if you slowed it down in slow motion, you still would not be able to see.
Yeah,
me
it'd only be
moving
at 10,000 frames a second. It'd be one frame.
I
of
would
you
change.
hitting next.
Yeah, I would not ever watch this movie again if if it was on, I would change the channel. I actually would. I would change the channel, watch something else. I really did not enjoy the movie. Now, again, remember too, I like Ron Howard. I like Chris Hemsworth. I like Nagata or whatever his
Daniel
name is.
Bruhl,
Daniel Bruhl. Like him.
Yeah.
He did
Oh,
a
yeah.
great, all
Fantastic.
of them. They did a great job.
Yeah.
I literally did not like the characters in the movie and the way they were portrayed. And, I would have liked to have seen something at the end, even if it was just a shot of the two real people in the same picture, both smiling, not looking at each other, but both smiling.
Honestly, do you think a black and white photo of them arm over arm smiling would have fixed it at the end of the movie?
Not like that. No, what I'm talking about is an actual photo of like a photo or a clip where they're both smiling, and I think that would have done it for me, but not like arm in arm.
Just being happy at all?
Happy. Just being happy. Like at a race, they're both there, but they're both happy that they're racing.
Yeah.
That, to me, would have almost redeemed the entire film, because that's what it's all about to me, is do you enjoy what you're doing in your life? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, I mean, and they both said, they both had their ways of enjoying what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, no, I would immediately turn the channel. I would not sit down and watch it. I would not. No, I would change it.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's to be expected. I would not change the channel. I think I'd leave it up, but I wouldn't stop what I was doing.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have it on as background noise or whatever.
Okay, well, yeah, you said you almost did the other day.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just leave it as whatever. I wouldn't sit down and watch it, or if someone was like, hey, what should we watch tonight? I wouldn't jump up and say like I would with Ford versus Ferrari, and I have in the past at Hangouts where people are like, what should we watch?
I really like that film.
Ford versus Ferrari.
Wow. Wow.
And then it always gets vetoed, and they're like, shut up, car nerd.
Car nerd.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wouldn't jump out of my seat to change the channel, but like, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't jump up and change it, but like, if there's a new podcast out from like Tom Segura or something, like I'd probably just watch that instead.
Because if it came on, I'd be like, oh hell no.
Yeah.
Oh hell no.
Yeah, I know.
And I would leap across.
Yeah.
Whatever. There's nothing to leap across, but I would leap across the table or something and change the channel.
All right. Well,
no, that's cool though. That I love the fact that you love the movie. That you really enjoy it.
Yeah, I did like it.
It's very cool. Yeah.
What's our next movie? It's your pick.
Our next movie. I actually have one that dovetails beautifully into this movie.
Yeah?
Yes. You're actually going to... I think you're going to enjoy this.
Okay.
Talladega Nights.
Oh, my God. I love Talladega Nights.
Yes. So
I love it so much.
It's obvious. I mean, spoiler alert here to our own podcast that we both love the movie.
Yeah.
But it dovetails actually very neatly into this movie.
Okay.
So, rivalry between a foreigner and an American.
One of the best there is. I wake up and I piss excellence. Very quotable movie.
Very quotable and fun.
This is, to me, one of the handful, not even handful, there's actually quite a few. This is the golden age of comedy.
Yes.
This is hands down the golden age of comedy.
Yes.
The mid-2000s.
Yes.
We had Talladega Nights. We had Step Brothers. We had Hot Rod. We had Superbad. We had Pineapple Express. We had The Other Guys. We have, just so many iconic, just dumb movies, dumb comedy movies.
But you're right, it was the golden age. It really was.
100% the golden age. And I think this is really the only one we'll touch on car-wise, besides maybe Hot Rod.
Yeah, Hot Rod would be another
Hot
good
Rod
one.
at some point, even though it's motorcycle.
Yeah, but there's still a bunch of stuff in that. It's a great movie too. It's a lot of fun.
It's just a fantastic
It is a fun movie. But yeah, Talladega
Nights. I am so excited for this one.
Me too. And I thought about that as we were talking about this. Literally thought about, because you came down and I was like searching through our collection to see what movie to do next, and I didn't really know until I thought about it, and I thought, wow, it really dovetails, and I'll explain more in our next podcast.
Yeah, I'd love
to
hear
it. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I guess we'll catch you next time.
All right, sounds good. Catch you next time. Goodbye.